Welcome back to Q Points, the podcast. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is Jay Ray, sometimes known by my governments as Johnny Ray Cornegay III. Good evening. Happy Thanksgiving, folks.
All of the things. Welcome back to Q Points, the podcast, dropping the needle on Black music history. It's the holidays, that PTO has been put in.
Yes.
You are at home. You're really not trying to leave the house. The weather might be frightful where you are. What do? You go to your favorite streaming platform and you pull up a movie that you just enjoy over and over again. This particular episode is about Soul Food, the movie. And when I think about the holidays, J-Ray, I don't even, I'm getting to the point, I don't need a whole lot of hoopla. Sometimes I'm just really good just being at home watching a movie. And one of those movies is Soul Food. It's something that you can revisit, especially during the holidays. You can sit and watch it. You could recite it verbatim because we've seen it just that many times. And there's a lot of different themes that came up just revisiting the movie and the soundtrack that just came up in researching and getting ready for this particular episode. So we're going to talk about that. So just get cozy and, warm up a piece of that leftover that you still have in the refrigerator.
Yes.
Some pie, whatever it is that you got going on, because this is going to be a really fun episode. Now, make sure you take small bites because I guarantee that you're going to bust out laughing and I don't want you to choke. So, in the meantime, while you're doing that, getting ready, getting the leftovers warmed up, J-Ray, please let our listener and know how they can keep in contact with us and how they can share our show with their friends, and so that they can become our friends and we can all eat on this soul food that we call Q Points Podcast.
Absolutely. As old classic hip hop song would say, so that we could be friends. You know what I'm saying? All of that. So
All of it.
I should note, I'm drinking out of my Jean-Michel Basquiat cup that I got when I was with you when we went to see King Pleasure. Oh no, did I say King Pleasure with you? No,
No,
I
that was
saw
me.
that was the other museum. I went to so many museums in New York. Anyway, I'm drinking out of my Jean-Michel Basquiat cup, and inside the cup, this is my tradition for the holidays. I have some oat nog I'm drinking.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very light now. I did spike it a little bit. It's got a little room in there. You know what I'm
Of
saying?
course,
It's the
as you
Hout J.
should.
Right. So I'm just letting the folks know I have my Jean Michel mug. It has a little bit of eggnog in there with a little bit of rum. It's a wonderful thing. But back to DJ Sir Daniel's point. How can you support Q Points? You are already doing the best thing ever. If you are listening to our voices, that means you are either watching the show somewhere or you are listening to the show somewhere. And the way to support the show is just making sure that you hit that subscribe button. It is completely free to do. Okay. The next thing that you could do us a solid. It's another free thing. Like DJ Sir Daniel said, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your chosen family, because if you like Q Points, chances are they're going to be into Q Points too. And they're going to check it out just because you recommended it to them. So make sure that you go ahead and share the show. Super, super, super helpful. The other free thing that you can do is join our mailing list at magazine.qpoints.com. We got a lot of fresh material over there. And you can shop our store. If you want to keep the lights on over in Q Points land, we so grateful for you. You can go over to store.qpoints.com, get yourself a little something, something. It's the holidays.
Today, this episode, we are talking about soul food. Yes. Soul Food came out in 1997, September of 1997, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so September 1997, Soul Food came out. And what was interesting, so we're going to start talking about the album first, the soundtrack first. And here's why. The soundtrack actually came out like a whole week and a half before the movie came out. And that I forgot about because in the current era that we're in, there's not like big, Black Panther, I think, had it. That was the first time in a long time where I felt like there was a big soundtrack album. You know what
Mm.
I'm saying? Uh but back in this era, so in the 90s period, the soundtracks would sometimes be bigger than the movie. Like we would have flop movies with huge soundtracks.
Listen, the soundtracks were had a life of their own. I mean, off the top of my head, I mean, we could start with the giant of them all. The Waiting to Exhale soundtrack is probably one of the biggest,
Yeah.
substantial soundtracks that has come out in decades. That yielded so many hits. I mean, hit after hit after hit. What else comes to mind?
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, you're bringing something up that literally is now a thread through all of this. I think of Boomerang, I think of Waiting to Exhale,
Mhm.
and I think this one also fits. This soundtrack, Soul Food, has a lot of hits. Babyface is kind of
Babyface. You're
is
you're
like
you're
the
absolutely
thing.
correct.
Like,
You are absolutely correct.
huh?
He is Babyface is the through line, and let's be honest, Babyface was definitely the man that you wanted to put some sauce on your album.
Yeah.
He had the 90s in a chokehold, and to this day the music still resonates and stands the test of time to this day. So you're right. But it's funny, the first song that went really huge off of this particular soundtrack wasn't a Babyface production. It was actually Timbaland, and of course we're talking about Total and Missy's What About Us.
Man, let me tell you something. Well, one, it's so funny thinking of What About Us as like the lead single from this soundtrack, and two,
Hmm.
it being a Timbaland and Missy joint, because it fits into the idea of the film, but it also is like just a dope track that's like, and when you see the party sequence, you see how it fits in. But when
Yes.
I first started watching the movie, I was like, this isn't giving what I thought it was going to give based on that song. But then once again, it fits in. But I will tell you the beauty for me of hearing that song was Total was just a fly group. Like they no, neither none of those women were like the biggest singers in the world.
Hmm.
But let me tell you that swag that they had transcended all of that. And there was a tweet from Missy probably about a decade ago where she said, "Yo, I was so nervous to present this song to Total because for her, she was like, yo, because Total was fly. And she was like, she didn't want them to be like, oh, I don't want to do this song. That song as a lead joint and a hit for Total was crazy.
It was, and of course, it led to Total discovering their synergy with
Yep.
Missy Elliott, and then we got the Kima Keisha and Pam album, which, oh my god,
Yes. That joint
to your point,
smacks.
to your point, none of them are classically trained singers, vocalists, but the way that Missy was able to take them in the studio and to guide them and to create songs that felt natural for them to sing, and it felt natural, so natural that we received it the way that we did, and it became a massive hit for them, off the chain. So shout out to Missy, who is a new Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee. Congratulations to her on that. Yeah, really gave us some dynamic music. But back to the soundtrack, the Soul Food soundtrack, it was also, it was chock full of R&B, just mega hits. Do
Uh-huh.
you know We're Not Making Love by Drew Hill, I mean, was all over black radio, especially the Quiet Storm?
Yes.
There were like several songs on that soundtrack. The joint with After Seven, Casey
Uh-huh.
and JoJo, uh,
Milestone.
Milestone, right? That was all over Quiet Storm
Uh-huh.
radio. Of course, Escape had
Yep.
had a ballad on there as well. So it was just, I mean, it was just stood for R&B greatness. Like you could not get away from hearing that album.
You know, and you're absolutely right. And I think for me, and I'm curious to know what you think of this, Sir Daniel, as well as our listeners. When this soundtrack came out, LaFace was in a really interesting place. Like I think this soundtrack was like the dividing line
Mm,
between classic LaFace, and I'm talking Crazy Sexy Cool, you know, Ooh on the TLC Tip, Southern Playalistic, da 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 da. All of those black music staples, right? That became huge hits and really built them as a label. In 1997, though, they were about to enter their pop hit era. You were about to have Usher drop.
mhm.
By the way, this soundtrack and Usher's My Way dropped the same day.
Wow.
Yep. They doubled up.
Huh.
So on September 16th, 1997, Usher's My Way dropped and the Soul Food soundtrack dropped. So I feel like this album also marked a dividing line between LaFace Records moving out of black record uh period into like these big pop hits. So Tony Braxton's Secrets is coming, Usher's My Way, Pink's Can't Take Me Home.
I was just about to say you can't not mention Pink.
Yep.
Pink
Yep.
is definitely on, like, really took them to another level.
Yeah. So this soundtrack, I think having What About Us as like the lead single too by Missy and Tim is saying something about where the label was too at the time, because typically, or at least as far as I can remember, whenever there was like a LaFace like thing, a LaFace artist was probably going to be the lead like
Mm,
out the gate. In this instance, you know, Total was signed to Bad Boy. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
Missy and Tim was from Virginia. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like a LaFace thing that was the lead thing. It was they were trying something different, and I think that ultimately led them to their next phase.
And it certainly worked out for them. Worked
Yeah.
out for their in the best way possible. And we can't not um s- give a shout out to the Outcast song In Due Time,
Hmm.
which I think was a really great representation of CeeLo as a vocalist, because CeeLo was on
Yes.
the hook.
Yep.
And I mean, just really gave it that, took that song to where it needed to be, because it really resonated. It added to the feeling that the movie was giving to you, because the movie itself was all about blackness and black families and all of these shared experiences that we have together. So shout out to that soundtrack was definitely it. And then of course we can't not talk about the monster hit that Boys to Men had in Dear Mama. It's
Right.
not
A song for
a
Mama, but
song for Mama,
right.
yeah.
but
I get
but
them mixed up. You know why?
right,
Because every Mother's Day,
right.
without fail, the programmers will put a song from Mama right back after Tupac's Dear Mama. So it's like,
Yes.
you heard them in combination all the time for sure.
Yeah. You know, I two things. I think it's so interesting thinking about Boys to Men at this time, because you know we talked about that documentary that was on Netflix where it had like just the sheer impact of Boys to Men and how all of your white boy bands were essentially just
Mhm.
mimicking Boys to Men, because there was nothing like Boys to Men at the time on the pop stage, right? Jodeci was just a really different group. Boys to Men did something different in the pop landscape, so all the boy bands followed that. So thinking about the fact that one, they're on this album and they've had like two back to back monster record breaking hits. This becomes another huge hit for them. Babyface, of course, is the through line through all of those hits.
Again with the
Um,
baby face.
I do want to mention, so I didn't realize this. Because I hadn't listened to the soundtrack in a while. But by the way, it's off of streaming. I just happen to have a copy of the
Mm.
soundtrack because it's not on streaming. Somebody has it uploaded up on YouTube. I am curious about why it's not available. But Tony has a song that's basically Let's Get Down. I was like, Boys and Girls has the exact same melody as Let's Get Down, which came out a year prior. So I do have questions. If we ever interview Raphael Sadiq, we have to ask him, how did Boys and Girls materialize? Was it because it's basically like a very similar structure of a song. So I'm curious to know if they were linked at some point and one made the record and one didn't, and that's why one ended up on the soundtrack. I'm just really curious.
Could be, those. So, a lot of times people go to jam sessions, and it's like executive producers go to people's jam sessions. They be like, I like that. I want that for this soundtrack. Let's go ahead and tailor make that for the soundtrack.
Right.
This is what we're talking about on this one. I want that. Yeah, whatever you're doing there, I like that, but I want it for the soundtrack. And they acquiesce and they just make it happen. So it could be one of those stories. You're right.
When we interview Raphael
When
Sadiq.
we interview Raphael Sadiq, we will find out. We will get the answer for that. Um, but before we move on from the soundtrack, we just and the soundtrack and the movie itself would not be possible if it were not executive produced by not only Kenneth Babyface Edmonds,
Mhm.
but his wife at the time, Tracy Edmonds, was this beast of a
Yeah.
producer that came out of, it felt like she came out of nowhere, but she of course was clearly in the trenches. She had been doing work on, what is it, Entertainment Tonight
Mhm.
and different magazine shows like that of the era. But Tracy Edmonds, Jerry, did you know, of course, she produced Have Plenty,
Yeah.
which came out before Soul Food and which became a hit on its own. But she was an executive producer on College Hill,
See that I
which
didn't
was
know. The
black.
BET reality show?
Yes,
Huh.
BET's first reality television show, College Hill. She was an executive producer on Punks, the movie Punks. Yep.
Really?
Yep, she was so of course Soul Food. We all know Soul Food started off as a movie and then went to Showtime and became a TV series that ran for like 4 seasons. She remained executive producer on that. But Jerry, bust this out. Did you know that she was the executive producer on Little Kim's Countdown to Lockdown?
Shut Get it, Tracy Edmonds.
Yes. So Tracy was all up in it. And DMX's Soul of a Man. So Tracy Edmonds has given the culture a lot. Like production wise on a lot of these television shows, reality series that finally centered black people. Tracy Edmonds was behind that. So shout out to Tracy Edmonds and her team. What was the team called? Well, it's the Edmonds Entertainment Group,
Yep.
but they were called something else.
Huh.
I can't
I,
remember what they were called at the time, but yeah. So shout out to Tracy Edmonds on her partnership with her then husband,
yeah.
creating these cultural mainstays in Soul Food the movie as well as soundtrack.
This is bringing up for me, and I hadn't thought about this, but the importance. So many of our important cultural film outputs have had music as a foundation. Like I think of Barry Gordy and what Motown was doing on the film tip. Of course, we're now talking about Babyface and Tracy Edmonds, but we think of Russell Simmons and like all of these
Hmm.
people that were music people, but began to create these opportunities for black folks to be seen on the big screen.
Hmm.
That's like major. So for folks
Andre
that
Harrell.
Andre Harrell too,
Yeah.
all of these folks just seeing like a step further of seeing something in these music people and being like,
Right.
"Oh, you should be on a big screen too. Let me do that." Because when we talk about soul food, like of course it's an ensemble cast,
Hmm.
but of course, you have Vanessa Williams, who's essentially in kind of like the lead character, who is a multi hyphenate performer, but had essentially been a pop star for several years before kind of taking on this role.
That's right, kids listening. If you weren't Vanessa Williams, let me put it in context for y'all. Vanessa Williams is Lion Babe's mom. Okay, let me put that
Yes.
in. So that's context for y'all. That's Lion Babe's mom. But before she was Lion Babe's mom, Vanessa Williams had a whole career. She was a Miss America.
Yep.
Who she unjustly lost that title, but
Yep.
decades later was finally vindicated. But then she turned that moment into a huge career as a recording. A recording star, of a
Uh-huh.
successful recording star, Broadway star,
Yes.
a
Television star.
television star. I mean, Ugly Betty, Desperate
Yep.
Housewives, all of that stuff. Vanessa Williams, I think she really doesn't get the props that she deserves. Like, she truly showed everybody how to do it. And we're talking about holiday movies.
Yeah.
She is the star of one of,
A
it probably
Divas
a
Christmas
Diva's
Carol.
Christmas Carol is
Oh,
a
it's a
cult
key.
classic. It is a cult classic. Come on. You gotta, if you haven't seen it, you gotta see it. Vanessa Williams, Chili from TLC is in it. Kathy Griffin is in it. It's a lot of great, it's a lot of great cameos in there. Also, it's a great movie. But yes, so being that we're on the subject of Vanessa Williams, I just have to say this before we go any further. Vanessa Williams' character was Teri on Soul Food.
Mm-hmm.
Teri is not the villain, y'all.
Period. Why do y'all think Teri, of all people?
Teri was not the villain of this movie. The quiet as kept, the villain of this movie was diabetes. But we're gonna talk about that a
We
little
gonna
bit
talk
later.
about that. Listen, I have all types of notes for our culture after watching Soul Food, but we gonna get into
We're gonna get to that.
it.
But back to your point about music
Mm-hmm.
being like totally being an angle of this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's interesting because in this, a couple of things in this movie too, like the opening of the film, you have the Boyz II Men song that kind of anchors the film at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, like we said, Vanessa Williams starring, but then you have the whole angle of the Michael Beach character, who
Mm-hmm.
is who's a
Miles.
hotshot lawyer, Miles, who's a
Mm-hmm.
hotshot lawyer, but then Miles decides that he is going to pursue his music career and founds a group. And you have Casey and
Mr.
JoJo,
JoJo. After
Kayvon
seven.
and Melvin up in there, and Babyface is up there playing too. And then you have Michael Beach, like, kind of playing around in his keyboard,
Lip syncing.
lip syncing to the thing. But just the interweaving of music throughout this film, and it becomes just kind of part of it. The music masterfully kind of sets the mood. It sets the tone, and much of it is songs from this soundtrack that do that.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about how music gathers the family. The
Yes.
movie opens up with at Bird's wedding
Mm-hmm.
during the reception.
Yeah.
And everybody's dancing to September by Earth, Wind and Fire, which is also on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Which is like September is up there with Frankie Beverly and Maze
Yes.
Before I Let Go.
Yep.
As far as the blackety black music that you can have at a family gathering. So it's anchored by that. And we can't not also think about Cousin Faith and her dancing. Now
And I
Cousin
was I
Faith,
was about to mention Cousin Faith and her dancing. Like, Faith, I want to talk about Faith. Can we talk about Faith now?
we can talk about Faith because I have thoughts and feelings about Faith too. I think Faith kind of got a bad rap. But
I
that's
I no, I for this film, I feel like Faith represented kind of freedom. Like,
mm-hmm.
Faith was kind of inserted into this family to show that you could exist outside of the confines of whatever you think you need to be doing right now. Now,
Right.
what she did with Miles, I ain't with that. I mean, but they was both wrong. So I'm saying, like, both Miles and her was, and it was in the house. I mean, y'all could. It was a
It was
lot of
messy. It
problems. It
was
was
messy.
messy.
It was messy. But to your point, it's like faith is a lot of us. Like, I know we were going to talk about this later on, or who you resonate with, but but
Please.
I can relate to Faith. Faith is an outsider. Faith is a creative.
Yeah.
Faith is nobody has faith in faith. You know,
Mm,
faith is seeking connection.
yeah.
And when faith definitely when Faith loses her way, she always, for whatever reason,
Comes
comes
back
back to
back.
her family, and she's seeking that. And there's a lot of Faiths right now that are dreading going to their family's house over the holidays because of how they're being treated.
Yes.
So there is, and let's, although I still don't think that Teri is a villain,
No.
I think if people had extended some grace and some love to Teri, she would have not have been so guarded that she couldn't accept the fact that her husband had um ideas or desires outside of being an attorney, because everybody else, if you look at it, everybody else was allowed to explore and to be free.
Yeah.
She felt as if she was the one that was not allowed to explore and be free, but she had to follow like a very straight-laced life and to have a very straight-laced career. She
Yes.
wasn't allowed to do that, but everybody else is. And so when that happens, she feels like she has to put on this armor. She has to become parentified to the whole family.
Hmm.
And so that's how a Teri is created. That's how a
Yes.
Teri is born. And it doesn't make her a villain. It makes her somebody that really needs to be touched, that really needs to be brought in to the fold. And so y'all are out there creating Teris and you don't even know it. You're creating
Right.
faiths as well.
You. Ooh. And let me tell you something. Thank you so much to Kimberly, who is also in the chat. And I want to bring up two. I'm going to bring two things in.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to Faith, I
Mm-hmm.
do believe as well. I agree. I think it was slight revenge against Teri, because of the way Teri had treated Faith, as well as they kind of set it up. Like, I can see that now as an adult. When I watched this at 20 in 1997, I had very different feelings. But watching it and getting ready for this show, I was like, oh, I see how all of this went down. Like, this was
Yes.
bound to happen in this situation. So, and the other thing is, there is a level of resentment when you're the ATM. Now, what's really interesting is, and I don't know why I didn't catch this, or I probably did and just didn't pay it no mind, but in getting ready for this show, I also see how Faith was like throwing that up at everybody every time. And I'm like, girl, if you don't want to pay for it, then don't
I
pay
mean,
for it. Teri,
Terry.
Teri,
Mm-hmm.
Teri, if you don't want to pay for it, then don't pay for it. You know what I'm saying?
But here's the
But
thing. Teri's doing that because she wants acceptance. That's her
yes,
way of saying, look at me, I'm worthy. I'm worthy of y'all love. And she was basically trying to buy people's love and affection at some point. And, and the only way that she could do that was to gain and to have some power was to lord over their heads like, hey, y'all, I'm gonna take care of this wedding. Y'all know I got it. That's what y'all come to me for. I mean,
yeah.
I wish y'all would come to me outside of money.
What's the word, everybody? This your man, Mr. Al Peter, Mr. Peterson's Neighborhood, and the MPN Network. And I'm here today to tell you about what the MPN Network consists of. The MPN Network is an entertainment as well as a developing media company based in Jacksonville, Florida. Our goal is to highlight various creatives that exist in spaces of music, visual arts, podcasting, and more. Within the network, we have multiple brands that will parallel with creatives, events, and other brands. The Neighborhood Podcast Network is a collective of independent podcast shows that has various topics ranging from the latest culture news, mental health, sports, and leisure conversations. We also have the Groove Suite brand that explores the realm of soul, hip-hop, R&B, funk, and more.
The Groove Suite.
Our health and beauty section gives a view on how to keep yourself in shape, in style, and in tune with your body and your mental. Last, we have the Fly Socks and Tees, an annual summer event that brings creatives together to celebrate the past years and victories that were received. So swing by our website, mpn-llc.com, and subscribe so you can stay up on what's happening with the neighbors and the groovers. Also follow us on our Facebook page as well as Instagram and Twitter, MPN Management. Building but becoming to the top.
Actually thinking of the wedding scene and also thinking of the anniversary scene. Whenever there was like music around, it was like Teri couldn't like participate. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like people were like the family was having fun and kind of engaged. Now,
Mm-hmm.
of course, obviously at the anniversary, she had just saw Faith, you know, her husband. So
Right.
I get that, but at the beginning, it was like, girl, like it's Earth, Wind, and Fire on. I don't know what's happening. You know what I'm saying?
She was so even when you had the flashback of Maxine and Kenny getting together at the roller rink when she
Yeah.
was there as his date,
Right.
you can see why Teri had a lot of resentment. Maybe Teri couldn't dance. Maybe Teri, you know, she was trying to do the roller. She was wanting this young man, her suitor, to escort her on the roller rink and take her around. And who knows, she may have completely changed after that and been a different person. But you know, here comes Maxine. You know, Maxine is bubbly.
Yeah.
I'm an only child, so I don't know about all of the dynamics of, you know, child placements in families. But you know, they say middle kids are have a lot of personality because
Right.
they have to in these family dynamics. And one of the great things about soul food is that it resonates with so many people.
Mhm.
Excuse me, because of the exploration of family dynamics and sibling placement.
Yeah, I wanted to go back because you brought up something earlier, and I know we were going to talk about it later, but I think this actually relates to why this film is so important culturally. So interestingly for me, the character that I resonate with the most is I resonate my child, the
Mm,
child in me resonates with Ahmad. So I was
mm,
Ahmad.
okay.
Here's the thing I want to talk about really quick. We I was the kid that adults confided stuff in that they should not have.
Mm,
I was the kid who was holding things that as a child I didn't know what to do with or how to handle, but because I was smart and I was not judging. I People told like there was a lot of stuff that I was just in. And so when I looked at Ahmad and there was of course that scene at the end where he has the breakdown of like, listen, Big Mama gave me this big task of getting y'all together because that's what
yeah.
y'all do. Y'all give me things to do. I gotta console Lim. I gotta hang out with Aunt Teri and have her and you know get her through things. I gotta help my mama. I gotta help Big Mama. I gotta do all of this stuff. But that breakdown at the end broke my heart because it was like this is a child
Mhm.
trying to do what the adults want him to do, but he doesn't have the tools. He's a child, and he's being put in this position. I felt most awful for Ahmad to be put in
Yeah.
this position of being this man child when he just should have been a child and they just should have kept him out of all of it. So the child in me most resonates with Ahmad. I will say the story that most resonates me though when I rewatched today was actually Lim, because that whole idea of just trying to do the right thing. Lim was just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, Lem. Oh my God, there were so many themes that are timeless within this movie. You know, we've got, speaking of Lem, you're talking about prison reform
Yes.
and the plight of black men coming home after, you know, doing a bid
Yep.
and what that looks like for them and how they experience, you know, the world that has gone on without them
Mm-hmm.
while they were locked up. For all intents and purposes, they're frozen in time while the world has advanced. And so now he's got to catch up.
Yep.
He's coming, and then on top of that, he's coming into a family
Right.
with uh, with a family, even though it's dysfunctional in its own way, is intact, which is probably something that he never experienced or didn't have, and so now he's got to navigate his way into being a part of that. And he's coming into a relationship with a woman who is a business owner
Yep.
and who, is taking care of things, so he's got to put his ego in check. And so and throughout the movie there was all, remember that scene with Lem and Kenny on on the sofa when
That was
he lost
special.
his job,
Yeah.
and they were talking about whether or not he should let Bird know that he lost the job.
Yeah.
And they were both like, hell nah,
Hell nah.
you don't let no black woman know you ain't got no job,
Yep.
that. So there was that. Those are the things that keep coming up in conversations amongst black families, amongst the black experience, the male female dynamics of uh infidelity,
Yes.
romance, and versus finance, that even with the people like Teri and Miles had money,
Yeah.
but they didn't have the romance.
Right. And
Then,
where you look
then
at
you have
Kenny and Maxine,
Maxine. They can't keep their hands off of each other,
right.
but he's a blue collar worker and struggling.
Yeah.
So it's just so many themes going on in this movie that make it one of those what's the word I'm looking for? Just make it one of those touchstones in the community. I I can't, like I said, even though I'm an only child, I still related to each and every one of those personalities, the cousin, everybody. I could relate to it all. We had a big mama. My grandmother passed away from complications of diabetes as well. She had, now I think about it, my grandmama was big mama. She had her leg amputated. Yep, all of that kind of stuff. And so the theme of health,
Yeah.
which we've been talking a lot about on Q Point since our inception, is I'm glad they didn't shy away from it. I'm glad that they showed the Big Mama's nub,
Yeah.
from
Yeah,
because
man.
that's a real thing. I'll never forget the first time I saw my grandmother's amputated leg.
So, it's interesting that we're talking about this because one of the things that I remember learning from Soul Food in 1997
Mm.
was I didn't have I didn't know much about sugar, quote unquote. I mean, the diabetes, black folks are gonna call it. We called it
The
sugar.
sugar,
The
the sugar.
sugar.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know much about sugar and how it diabetes and how it impacted the body. What soul food helped me to do was to understand my great grandmother's challenge. So my great grandmother had both legs amputated when I was a
Mm.
kid. And I remember her being in a lot of pain. And she also had diabetes, right?
Mm.
But I didn't have a concept of what all of that meant. So this film actually helped me to make some sense out of all of that, which was great. Here's my bone to pick, though.
Mhm.
Here my bone is I was like, Ahmad, Big Mama just died. Get off of them ham hocks now. No, we not doing that. And I love soul food. So I'm not judging. But what I'm
Mhm.
saying is it really made me think about this woman just died. We know that diabetes was the cause of her death. Um, and how, as a culture, do we reckon with that? You know what I'm saying? To make different choices. So it just makes me ask the question.
No, for sure, because it's like soul food and music are kind of the same thing. Like
Yeah.
they, it came out of, um, it came out of us being restricted. It came out of us crying for freedom and trying to live through a horrifying experience. So we get two things: we got soul food and we got our music, right? That
Yes.
came out of that experience when we came across here, and a lot of it came out of pain. A lot of it came from we did it because it was the same stuff that carried us through. This is what we knew.
Right.
But when you get to a certain point, it's like, okay, we can do better now.
Right.
Like we don't have to eat that pig butt. We don't
Right.
have to, we don't have to do those certain things anymore. We don't have to, downgrade women in records anymore. We don't have
Yes.
to. We don't have to talk that talk like like they used to, because that was a thing to get records sold. It was a thing to do, but we don't have to do that anymore. But some of those patterns, to Kimberly's point in the chat, some of those patterns are generational and take a lot of unlearning.
Yeah.
And again, a great point brought up by this movie that came out over 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago, that still resonates with us now.
Yes.
And I one of the other themes that kind of got me the most, like diabetes and food got to you. What got to me the most about this movie was the generational wealth aspect. Like
Mm.
I was a little heated about the house situation.
I was too.
The how It's those conversations that we're having about, do you sell Big Mama's house?
Right.
And it's a greater conversation about passing down wealth.
Yes.
And everybody knows that the best way to pass down generational wealth is, of course, insurance
Mhm.
and
Ah.
policies. And so, but a lot of us don't have that in place. So we
Mm.
got to so we got to have fish fries. We got to crowd fund with GoFundMe's in order to bury somebody. And
Mm.
so those are, I mean, this is truly this movie is like chock full of lessons for the Black community that we still excuse me, aren't getting.
Yeah.
Like like think about it, when you're gathered up with your folks, maybe not might be the time to be like, hey mom,
You
you
got your
got your
life
policy
insurance. You
together.
got. Let me tell
You
you.
got your burial plot. All that taken care of, because we
Right.
don't want to be scrambling when the time comes.
Absolutely. Like, and for a fact, for me, having to have those conversations with my dad, right? Of like, are we cremating or are we not? Right. And not
Yeah.
making it like you're not putting them in the ground. What you are doing is having real conversations so that you know how to proceed. I promise you, from experience, it makes things so much easier when
Yeah.
when your children know what you need from them, what they should be doing. It makes a huge difference. So whoever is that trustworthy child that you have, if you have more than one child and you know one of them is
Hmm.
trustworthy, sit them on down and tell them where all the papers are. They need to know where to go, where all the papers are, and what's in the papers so that they can do the thing. So I absolutely agree with you, Sir Daniel. That is true. And I think the other thing that we're not heeding in this moment is the complexity of relationship. We are in this moment now where if you say something I don't like on social media, I can block you, I can erase you, I can act like you
Hmm.
don't exist. Baby, Teri and Miles were married. Teri and Miles shared a house. Teri and Miles loved one another and trying to figure it out. Lim and Bird, same thing, right? Of these really hard, sticky, nasty, in the trenches conversations about how to be in relationship. Y'all need to be watching this movie and be like, this is what it takes sometimes, and you
Yeah.
gotta work through it. But you're right, this movie is chock full of just like nuggets.
I mean, and we could go on and on forever, but I think the question that really resonates most, the question that really needs answering, J Ray, is: are you a Bird, a Maxine, or a Terry? And that's not
Ooh.
are you a Bird, a Maxine, or a Terry? And And that could be for any of us to answer. Listener, think about it. Are you a Bird, a Maxine, or a Terry? If you haven't watched the movie, go ahead and put us on pause, watch it, and then start
I
us
know
up
who I
again,
am.
and then we'll talk about it. I I am going to say I am the I think I'm a Terry.
Are you? Okay.
I think I'm a Terry in the sense of I am that friend because I don't have siblings, but I'm that friend that is while everybody while everybody is caught up in the moment and is getting tipsy, I'm sitting there like watching, making sure that everything is in place, making sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. Um because I but because I feel like I have a duty
Yeah.
to people, to my friends, to my circle. I feel like I have a duty to protect them, and it's not even anything that I have been asked to do, but for whatever reason I feel like I must. And I think it's transparency. I think maybe that's my way of trying to connect with people and trying to make sure that people know that I am trustworthy and that I'm worthy of their love.
Yeah.
So I've put myself in those positions at times to where I'm just like, now I don't have Terry money,
Yeah.
but I'm responsible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm that
Yeah.
I'm that responsible one.
you know, yeah, I think I'm also a Terry. I'm a Terry with a little bit of Bird. I think I'm a Terry
Yep.
with a little bit of Bird because both Terry and Bird kind of have the same tendency of knowing, like fixing things, like
Mm-hmm.
stepping in, and needing to like make something right or make something go. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, so I don't think the thing about it is I'm not as cold as Terry. And I think I could talk it through a little bit better, but I'm also not as free with it as like Bird. So I'm like right in between. If I was gonna pick one, I would pick Terry, but I definitely think there are like aspects of a Bird in there.
You have bird tendency.
I have Bird tendencies.
And it's so funny that her name was Bird,
Right.
or her nickname was Bird, because in the hood context, a bird is somebody is, and it's not even necessarily just a young lady now. A bird is somebody who is just like, easily impressed by riches, your hoochies, your thoughts, they all kind of fall under the Bird label, and
Yes.
they don't necessarily think things through, they just react. And
Yep.
so that constitutes somebody as a bird because she really was a bird, by letting that man
D-
bring that man
girl,
into that shop
girl,
and telling him to do and putting on the
why
bracelet that he
and
gave her.
put
I was
on the
like,
bracelet? Why? Okay,
she played in his face. She played a
sh-
dangerous game
she
and
did,
lost.
and that scene still gets me because I was like, girl, this was a bad idea. This was especially after he had already said, I could do this, for
Yeah.
you to do it anyway. And then the dude going to confront him? Are you kidding me?
Knowing he was a jerk, knowing he couldn't resist, so dangling that carrot in that man's face. But again, these are things that are happening. Hell, these are things that are happening on social media in real time, if we're being real
Yes.
about it. But that's what makes soul food a classic. I think it's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's considered a black movie, and it's got a lot of black star power, so the masses didn't really latch onto it. But within the black community, that it's a bona fide classic because it has all those themes that make it the quintessential black movie, but it also makes it a quintessential human movie.
You know what, Sir Daniel? I think you just hit the nail on the head with that. I actually went into watching Soul Food in preparation for this show. Like, I probably am not gonna like it. You know, like it like I like you know what I'm saying? Like I think I like it more than I liked it before. As an adult, I'm
Mm.
watching this story unfold with like the knowledge I have now. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I'd watch this. I'd watch this again. I get why this is a thing.
Absolutely. And I'm like you because I hadn't watched it in eons.
Uh huh.
I didn't watch the TV series because I was like,
Right. Right.
first of all, it was on Showtime. I ain't have
I ain't have
Showtime at the time.
Showtime either.
But but no, looking back on it with our 2023 eyes, really, yeah, it really gave it some context and really it gave it some layers to me now. So I'm just like, okay, yeah, this is a really solid movie. It's got all of our favorites in it.
Yep.
Icons of the culture are in it. Um and it has the music, which I know y'all are
Yeah.
like, okay, isn't this supposed to be a music podcast? But
It's
Q
all in
Points,
there.
it's all encompassing. It's Black music history, also includes our films in which are projected, in which our images are shown to the masses. And the movies include the music and soundtracks. They all go hand in hand. And so I don't know. I think this is a really great idea to revisit this movie for just in time for the holidays.
Yeah.
And I really can't beseech you all, if you know a cousin Faith, draw cousin Faith closer to you before Faith
Before she do
family,
stuff to your husband.
to the family. So yeah, there's a lot of cousin Faiths out there. You might be a cousin Faith and you don't even know it.
Right. Man, oh man, this was such a magical episode. Thank you all for hanging out with us in the chat. By the way, we have a Teri in the chat and we have a
Mhm.
Maxine in the chat. So
Sure
thank
do.
you all for chiming in. And for those of you who are listening to the show or watching the replay, let us know what character you are. Are you a Teri? Are you a bird? Or are you a Maxine?
Maxine.
Let
Exactly.
us know. So listen, keep up with Q Points, y'all. If you are listening to my voice right now, that means you are doing one of the things that we need you to do the most, and that's listening to the show. So that's free to do. You can share the show. That's absolutely free. If you know folks that would get into it, if you're into it, you probably know folks that would be into it. So share it with them. Visit our store at store.qpoints.com.
Mm.
Also, join our newsletter. There's lots of dope content over there. We send it into your inbox. We don't hit you that much. We hit you like mostly once a week. We might hit you twice a week when there's something else going on. It ain't that much. So all we ask you for is your email address, and that's free too. So yeah, stay up with your boys.
Absolutely. And, Kimberly, we love you as well. We're still, like I said, we are still floating on air about a song for you, a
Yes.
live broadcast. I can't wait for you, if you haven't seen or listened to it, you're really going to enjoy that episode. So, like J Ray said, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you can be notified immediately when the episodes drop. But listen, J Ray, what do I always say? In this life, you have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. As always, I am DJ Sir Daniel,
My name is J Ray, y'all.
and this has been Q Points Podcast, dropping the needle on Black music history. Be safe out there, and we'll see you on the next go round. Peace.
Peace.